Hello there you guys, good morning. I hope you're all doing well. Today I want to share with you guys a video that I've been wanting to see for years, really just ever since I started my herbal journey. And it's something that I've still been looking for and just haven't been able to find, and I figured now that I've been down this path for a couple years and I've spent a lot of time on it, I thought that perhaps I could be the one to share this video. So today I'll be sharing with you all the information I look for and document each time I study a new herb. Okay, there might be dog feet walking around in the background, so apologies. I don't really have a plan for this video, and I really just wanted to sit down and share it with you. It's something that I've been thinking about sharing for really about a month now, and I just couldn't really figure out exactly how to format it, so we're just gonna wing it and see how it goes. But anyways, I have my trusty notebook with my key, which I will be giving you guys a key at the end of the video, and I will place one down below in the description. And for those of you on Patreon, there will be a downloadable key for you as well. So I've spent quite a few years working on the refining process of all the things I document, and honestly, still to this day, literally just yesterday, I added in another little bit that I research, or at least like to include in my notes. So take this key or guide as kind of a place to start and either take away or add on to it wherever you think you may need to. But to begin, there are about 4 main sections that I include in each herbal entry or research, which, if you watched my moon phases video, I do try my best to start at the beginning of each new moon. I get into it a little more in that video if you're interested, but the 4 sections that I cover are Herbal Identification, Medicinal Properties, if applicable, which personally I tend to only really deep dive into medicinal herbs as I am studying to become an herbalist. But of course, for many of you, you will just be going into magical associations, so this may not be of interest to you. And of course, for witchiness, I do have a magical attributes area. And lastly, I have cultivation and just the general growing instructions for each herb that I would be able to cultivate myself. So now that we have those 4 main sections out of the way, let's dig into what is in each of them. First and foremost, in the Herbal Identification section, I do think this page, here's Holy Basil, is really very important, and I would include it regardless of why you're keeping this book. So here I include the common name, like Holy Basil or Tulsi, and then I include the Latin binomial, and then underneath that some other common or folk names that it goes by. This way you'll know all of its names while researching in books, or if you come across it in a website that may go by something else, you'll know that that's what it's talking about. Then I also include the plant family. This is not really necessary if you aren't going to be delving into the medicinal properties, but personally, as somebody who is studying herbalism, as I've said too many times by now, I do think it's important to put the plant family down. This kind of helps you understand more of where it's coming from and some general attributes about it, especially if you're well versed in these things. So because Holy Basil is right here, Holy Basil is a part of the mint family. And because of this, it shares a lot of the same characteristics of the mint family members, like a square stem, opposite leaves, and 2-lipped flowers. So it does just kind of help me in my own mind classify, oh, I know what this will look like in general, or it should be kind of similar, you know, family stuff. Then after that, I include a botanical description. This is, I think, the most important part of crafting this area, as it's where you really put in what it looks like exactly, how to identify it, and some other little things. For me, I really just do a very big deep dive into what exactly it will look like, how to identify it, and stuff like that. This is also the section where I'll include lookalikes and similar cultivars. Alrighty, so that's the first section. Generally, I'm able to fit them on just 1 page of notes. It's really a pretty quick and concise thing, and it's a good little quick flip to and be like, okay, I know exactly what this general herb is. Then on the next page or the next section, I enter into the medicinal properties. Typically, this is the largest section in my book. Often it will take up multiple pages, honestly, sometimes even up to 5 to 10. I am very descriptive with medicinal uses, but I'll get into that in a second. Of course, as I said before, this area is optional, and if you are documenting magical herbs, some of them are poisonous. And because of this, I would be sure to include a section that says, this is toxic, and warnings, especially if you are somebody that does work with herbs that are not safe for consumption or have some dangerous things about them. So include that in your herbal studies if necessary. But anyways, for this section, I start by listing the recommended cultivars and the reasons why they're recommended or ways to identify them. So once again, for holy basil, because that's what we're working in here, I have 3 main cultivars listed and just what makes each one different. Then underneath that, I'll add the parts used and taste. Taste is a new thing I've added, and I think that it is really useful, especially when it comes to deciding how to make medicine for people. If you are somebody who is going to be making medicine, especially for young children, as some medicinal herbs don't taste very good. So keeping that in the back of your mind does help. Then after that, I list the actions and energetics. So I do want to make a note here. When studying herbs and writing down actions and energetics, each time I study an herb, go through 20 sources at minimum. I have quite a few books that I love and use every time, but I also have a couple of web pages that I trust, and in general, if I can't find anything there, I will deep dive a little bit and just look for trustworthy sources. But when it comes to writing down actions, I start by listing all the ones that I see in my first source and then cross-referencing. And each time I come across a new one, I'll add it to this bottom list. But each time I see one that I've already written down, listed a second or third time in a different source, I will add that to this top list. And this way I only keep the actions that are listed multiple times and agreed upon. One thing that I have noticed in my herbal studies is a lot of times, especially books written by hobbyist practitioners, people seem to just sometimes write down actions that they don't really know what they mean, or they just aren't accurate. And so I think it's best to really double check, make sure they are listed multiple times in multiple sources. And I also think it's important to see the person that is writing these actions list off how it applies and how it really is working in the herb. Because a lot of times I will see an action listed, but it's not mentioned again. And to me, that means it's not really a very potent aspect of the herb, and I prefer not to have actions that really aren't acting in the herb. They may be a side note, but they're not a main component of it. So that was a rambly mess, but that's my biggest tip when it comes to writing down actions and energetics as well, although most of the time energetics are very much agreed upon. But yeah, so just keep a keen eye and cross-reference. Make sure things are listed multiple times, and if you aren't aware of what an action means, look it up. And sometimes I even personally add in actions myself, because I do base a lot of my understanding of an herb at that quick glance of the actions list. So that's an important area for me, but up to you again how you do this, just that is my biggest recommendation. Then after that, I do include an area of specific indications, and this is similar to the actions area, although this list tends to be a little shorter and it's more, this is what you should use this herb for. You know, there are multiple herbs that are going to break a fever or help with a cough, but there are some that are very, very effective in that arena. And so this is where I list those uses, these specific indications of use. And typically all of that fits on my next page, sometimes not all the way, but it's a good starting point. This is the next area where I'm able to see, okay, I know this herb and now I'm looking for a cure or a fix. does this work for what I'm looking for? Yes. Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next bit. Once I have that, I have a section for specific medicinal preparations, meaning is it best taken as a tea, in a tincture, or as a salve? Some herbs must be taken internally, but others work more effective externally. Some work better when infused into an oil or alcohol, and it really does just depend. So this is the area where I list the best ways to use said herb as medicine. Then I include my ratio and dosage information. This does depend. Some herbs, especially food herbs, there aren't a lot of limits when it comes to dosing, but there are quite a few herbs out there that do have limits, and you must be very careful of how much you ingest. And this is where I make sure to list very clearly how to do that. Or even with food herbs like tulsi or holy basil, there is a recommended amount to take in order to have good results. Then after this is where I list medicinal uses. And you may think this is a little redundant, which it kind of is, but here I prefer to really deep dive into all the medicinal uses listed before and kind of discuss ones that I kind of touched on, or things that are actions that I didn't write down as specific indications, but they are important and good functions of the herb. I also list studies here and some experiential things, and it's just a big deep dive into the herb and its medicinal uses. This is the largest section of my book by far when it comes to herbal studies. Typically it is that 5 to 10 page area because it just is a lot of words. But personally, I really like to get into the nitty-gritty of each herb and explain why it does these things. You know, why is it anti-anxiety? How does it do that? Why does it help focus the mind? How does it do that? This is anti-cancer. How? Why? You know, I want the how, the why, and all of that business. Very well explained so that when I forget in a couple months down the line, I can look and really understand again. Then lastly, in this section, I include precautions and contradictions. There are quite a few herbs, even mild herbs, that have precautions and contradictions, things that may cross poorly with other medications, foods, diets, or lifestyles. And oftentimes medicinal herbs, some of their medicinal benefits may be bad in certain people. Somebody that has high blood pressure, if you have something that can help increase blood pressure, that's not good. Or if you're somebody that is very dry all the time and has a lot of trouble retaining fluid, something that's a diuretic would just worsen that problem. So I think it's important to include that area regardless, especially when it comes to something you are ingesting. Then next, this is the area that I think quite a few of you will think and like and include. This is typically a rather short and concise area for me in the beginning. It does expand later on depending on the herb, but as I'm somebody that tends to study more herbalism and medicinal herbs, this area is either hit or miss, and it just kind of depends. But that is the magical attributes section. Here it starts out pretty simple. I like to include the gender, planet, and element associations. And then I also add the facility, that's what I call it, or you may also call it the powers or correspondences of the herbs. This is where you would say something, let's say chamomile. It's calming and it brings peace and all of those qualities. Or rose, here, you know, it's associated with love. That's where you'd write those things. Those should be really, for me, I just have one word, little things. Here's this blank association, similar to how the specific indications area is in my medicinal area. Here it's just quick little things so that you can flip to that page and see, oh, I need something for this. Does this have it? Yes or no? There you go. After that, because I like my wordiness, I have magical uses and folklore. And this is where I really delve into it and explain some practices to do with just that single herb or common places it's been used historically. Then lastly, also an optional area is cultivation. Personally, I include this as I like having my own plants growing around me. So it's important to really understand them, and that process in my book for me, it really helps to just have it right there. So of course, optional, just something I like to have, but hey, maybe you guys do as well. And this even can apply to just littler things. Let's say it's a house plant, you know, maybe you can write how much water it likes to have, little things like that. But the things I include here are where it's native to. Really, that's something that I've added recently, and I just think that it's a little more interesting to have that little note. And I also then, super important if you're going to be planting outside, I include the zones that it will grow. Here in Virginia, Northern Virginia, we're kind of on the edge, but most things are pretty content to grow here. So that's usually not too bad, but it is important, I think, especially if you are living in a very tropical or cold area, depending, because some plants just won't grow for you. Then I add the soil, what kind of soil it likes, well draining or whatever, and then I like to add propagation. Here I'll just include how to grow it from seed if it's something that likes to grow by seed, or if it prefers to grow from a clipping, just general information like that, how to do that, all of that business. Then after that, growing information, garden care, I think that's pretty straightforward. Then after that, which this is super important, insects and disease. This isn't something that I've always included, and it is another rather new inclusion, and I kind of regret not including it earlier. But I think this is a very important thing to understand with your plants because they are susceptible to insects and disease, and understanding what can get to them and some preventative measures to help them out. I think preventing things first and foremost is important, and just going into planting and knowing what to look for also really does help. This way you can help stop a disease in its track before it's too late, or if an infestation is happening, you'll know how to take care of it. So that area is important and very useful. Then lastly, I include harvesting and preparation. This area can vary a lot depending on the herb, but it's pretty straightforward. How to harvest and how to prepare it for medicine or magical use. But that's basically it. This video is probably a little bizarre, but it's something that I've really wanted to make for a long time now. And it's something that I've always wanted to see. So I hope some of you guys have wanted this as well and maybe got some use out of it. I know my explanation was probably a little hard to follow. I will be including in the description a outline of this key of sorts, and on my Patreon I will be uploading a printable key that is a checklist and just honestly basically everything I have on this page for you all to follow if you're interested on checking it out over there. And if you want to go check out my other channel, my channel that's kind of turning into a vlog channel, I'd very much appreciate that. It will be linked down below and at the end. And like I said before, if you want to check out my Patreon and help support this channel and my other, I would really appreciate that. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you are having a lovely day, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.